Hi there, I'm Phil, and in these story analysis videos I take a look at a film in terms of its story structure, character arc and theme. Today we're looking at The Social Network. Make sure you've seen the film, spoilers ahead. The Social Network was written by Aaron Sorkin from the book by Ben Mesrick.
I thought what was going to happen was I would have a year before I'd even have to start thinking about it because the book had to be written. I found out, no, the studio wants me to start now. You're not going to wait for the book. You're going to write it while the book, these two things are just going to happen simultaneously.
Directed by David Fincher.
You know, at first glance, it's an unusual marriage of director and material. David is most known for being peerless as a visual director, and I write people talking in rooms.
And starring Jesse Eisenberg, Andrew Garfield and Justin Timberlake, among others. The film blends your traditional three-act structure with non-linear and Rashomon, which I'll get into in a moment.
I'm in.
Awesome.
That's what you said?
It was 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know what I said.
The inciting incident is that opening scene, where Mark Zuckerberg, as played by Jesse Eisenberg, is on a date with his girlfriend and she breaks up with him.
We're not dating anymore, I'm sorry.
Is this a joke?
No, it's not.
You're breaking up with me?
This rather lengthy dialogue scene sets everything up we need for the story. Now, before I get into the story proper, let me address a few of the key questions that may come up. This is based on a true story. The development of Facebook, the social media website, the rise of Mark Zuckerberg, and the relationships around that.
The literary licenses that I took are exactly the same as the literary license taken by anyone writing nonfiction. Nothing was invented for the movie for the sake of sensationalizing it or Hollywoodizing it.
This is a nonfiction movie.
But according to Mark Zuckerberg himself...
And basically they frame it as if the whole reason for making Facebook and building something was because I wanted to get girls or wanted to get into some kind of social institution.
I had Mark's blog post from that night, and I just wanted to back it up a couple of hours and show the scene that made him that angry.
So the inciting incident of the film is the opening scene, the date with Erica, the Rooney Mara character. This character of Erica only really appears 3 times in the film. This inciting incident, she'll come back at the midpoint, and she kind of comes right back at the climax. So she becomes a pivotal plot point for Mark, and a pivotal motivation for what he does, according to this version of the Mark Zuckerberg story. We also introduce here, and again, I don't know this from Aaron Sorkin himself, this is my interpretation of the script, but we also get here the introduction of both the spine and the theme of the film. And they're pretty much right together. The theme is...
I think we should just be friends.
I don't want friends.
Will you be my friend? And the theme for Mark's growth arc throughout the film is having friends, losing friends, what constitutes a faithful and loyal friend or not. And is Mark himself a faithful and loyal friend? And the spine comes in the very next line.
You're gonna go through life thinking that girls don't like you because you're a nerd. And I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that that won't be true. It'll be because you're an asshole.
Do you need to be an asshole to succeed in business? That's the implication here. That is kind of what Mark is trying to be in the second half of the film especially.
A story as old as storytelling itself, of friendship, loyalty, power, betrayal, class, jealousy, all these things that Aeschylus would have written about, Shakespeare would have written about, a few decades ago, Paddy Chayefsky would have written about. And again, I was just lucky. None of those guys were available, so I got to write about it.
The A plot is the development of Facebook itself, or the Facebook to begin with. Because she broke up with him, he writes that blog, and then he develops Face Smash. This gets him noticed by the Winklevise, and that leads to him developing the Facebook.
I'm in.
Awesome.
That's what you said?
It was 3 or 4 years ago. I don't know what I said.
In 3-act structure terms, this is our first act turning point. It's also the beginning of the non-linear structure for the film, as well as introducing our Rashomon effect. Basically, we're jumping back and forth between 2 timelines, effectively 3 different points of view. Mark's point of view, Eduardo's point of view, and the Winklevise point of view of what actually happened.
Instead of picking one and deciding that's the truth, I'm going to run with that, or picking one and deciding that's the sexiest, I'm going to run with that, I really liked that there were 3 conflicting versions of the story. So I wanted to kind of do it as Rashomon.
For those who don't know, Rashomon goes back to the Kurosawa film of Rashomon, which presents a story from multiple points of view. Everyone gets to have their say. We present their version of the truth, and it's up to you, the audience, to work out which of them is correct. Possibly none of them. Everyone has a different interpretation of what actually happened. So the truth is somewhere between each of these three interpretations that we have in this particular film.
I'm currently in the middle of 2 different lawsuits.
Did you say yes?
I said I'd help.
When did you approach Mr. Saverin with the idea for the Facebook?
I wouldn't say I approached him.
Sigh.
You can answer the question.
At a party at Alpha Epsilon Pi.
The first act's turning point of the B story, the central relationship between Mark and Eduardo, comes when Mark asks Eduardo to be his partner.
We're going to need a little startup cash to rent the servers and get it online.
So that was why.
Did he offer terms?
Yes.
We'll split it, 70-30. 70 for me, 30 for you for putting up $1,000 and for handling everything on the business end. You're CFO.
And you said?
I said, let's do it.
So Eduardo becomes one of the founding members of the Facebook. At the same time, the Winklevoss twins find out that Mark has stolen their idea, and they try to do something about it.
Harvard undergraduates believe that inventing a job is better than finding a job. So I'll suggest again that the two of you come up with a new project.
I'm sorry, sir, but that's not the point.
Please, arrive at the point.
You don't have to be an intellectual property expert to understand the difference between right and wrong.
And you're saying that I don't.
Of course I'm not saying that, sir. I'm saying that.
The first half of Act 2 is basically the rise of the Facebook throughout Harvard. And Mark becomes popular as a result of this.
Awesome job with the Facebook. Awesome job.
Thanks.
There's 2 key midpoint moments here. One is when they have the meeting with Sean Parker, Justin Timberlake's character.
I'm Sean Parker. How do you do? You must be Eduardo and Christy and Mark. Great to meet you.
So that dinner meeting with Sean Parker, when he says,
$1 million isn't cool. You know what's cool?
$1 billion.
This inspires Mark.
He owned Mark after that dinner.
And also starts to sow those seeds of doubt about how necessary Eduardo is to the whole equation.
Drop the. Just Facebook. It's clear. Shit.
Mark is in awe of Sean. He's his idol. He wants to be like him. He wants to be the kind of asshole that Sean is. He wants to be the kind of cool, successful guy that Sean is. This leans into the spine of our story that holds together our A-plot. Do you need to be an asshole to succeed in business? At the beginning, Mark is accused of being an asshole, but he's not really. He's just awkward. He's just socially a bit inept. And Erica doesn't quite get that.
No, are you like, whatever, delusional?
From this midpoint on, he's actively trying to be an asshole, to be like Sean.
Which one of you's Mitchell Manningham? And he'll say, I am. And then you say, Sean Parker says, fuck you. Walk out.
Okay.
And we see this especially coming out in the deposition scenes.
If you guys were the inventors of Facebook, you'd have invented Facebook.
The other midpoint scene that affects our B story primarily is when he bumps into Erica at the restaurant.
You called me a bitch on the internet, Mark.
That's why I wanted to talk to you. If we
On
could just...
the internet.
Again, encountering Erica and being spurned by her prompts him to do the next big thing for Facebook, which is...
We have to expand. What, Mark?
This drives us into the second half of Act 2, the whole trip to California. And leading us to the second act turning point, which is the all is lost moment. Now, there are 2 key beats here. The first, you may not realise, is actually a major turning point. This is when they get Peter Thiel on board as an investor, which is true, of course.
Now, let me ask you something. Who's Eduardo Saverin?
And they get Eduardo to sign a contract. As far as Eduardo is concerned, he's part of the business, he's one of the founding members after all, and he signs that contract.
Would you like to use my pen?
Eduardo? And when you signed these documents, were you aware that you were signing your own death certificate?
No.
This comes back around, of course, when Eduardo is asked to sign another piece of paper and realizes what's happening and confronts Mark.
He's wired in. Sorry? He's wired in.
Is he?
Yes.
About now, you still wired in?
Eduardo is the antithesis of Sean. He is not an asshole, and therefore he fails in business. This is the end of the friendship that began Facebook in the first place. This is the all is lost moment for their friendship. It is the all is won moment, arguably speaking, for Facebook as a company. And you can tell by Marx, as played by Jesse Eisenberg, you can tell by his reaction here. He knew this was happening, but it wasn't really his idea.
You signed the papers. You set me up. You're gonna blame me because you were the business head of the company and you made a bad business deal with your own company?
It's gonna be like I'm not a part of Facebook.
It won't be like you're not a part of Facebook. You're not a part of Facebook.
My name's on the masthead.
You might want to check again.
From this point on, it's a relatively short Act 3. We're mainly dealing now with the end of the friendship with Sean.
I have it under control.
I will get it under control.
The apprentice has outgrown their asshole master. And putting a button on our Rashomon structure, Marilyn Delphi says this.
When there's emotional testimony, I assume 85% of it is exaggeration.
And the other 15?
Perjury.
And the resolution for both the spine and the theme, which is, do you need to be an asshole to succeed in business? And will you be my friend? Is in that final scene with Marilyn Delphi, as played by Rashida Jones.
You're not an asshole, Mark. You're just trying so hard to be.
And then we're left with Mark, finding Erica on Facebook and asking to be her friend, and refreshing the screen. And Mark, the character's arc, is not wanting friends, as he declares at the beginning, certainly not wanting to be friends with her, and then wanting to be friends with her on Facebook at the end. So that's my take on The Social Network. If you like these kinds of videos, you know what to do. If you'd like to learn more about filmmaking, check out my book linked below. And if you'd like to see some of these videos that I can't put on YouTube, consider joining my Patreon. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.
What sound is he making? Is that like a tisk?
It wasn't a tisk. It was like a glottal stop. Almost a gag reflex.
Guys, what is this?